Greetings and welcome to the channel. This is Mikhailov from Team Retro, where we like retro games and the devices that bring them to us. Did you think we would end 2024 without advancements to the Retroid line? I did, and boy, was I wrong. Retroid came out with not just one, but two handhelds that have a lot of potential to be the best handhelds of 2024. So in this video, we're going to look at the Retroid Pocket Mini. This handheld has a small, portable form factor and a beautiful 4x3 AMOLED screen. Does it deliver on everything it promises? Let's go ahead and put this device through its paces and find out if it's worth your hard-earned dollar bucks. So let's dive in and get to work. At time of recording, the Retroid Pocket Mini can be purchased direct from their website starting at $199. The unit I am using for this review is an SFC colored unit purchased with my own funds. This is a retail unit and will have a similar experience to what you will find if you purchase this device. So it's time to hop onto our mount and ride into Spec Town. The Retroid Pocket Mini is powered by a Snapdragon 865 processor. The GPU is an Adreno 650. The device has 6 GB of LPDDR4X RAM clocked at 2133 MHz. The Retroid Pocket Mini is equipped with 128 GB of internal storage with expansion via a micro SD card slot. The screen is a 3.7-inch AMOLED screen with OCA lamination and a 1920 by 960 resolution. Giving the device life is a 4000 mAh battery. For connectivity, this handheld has Wi-Fi 6 built in as well as Bluetooth 5.1. The device ships with Android 10 with plans to update to Android 13 in the future. With that, let's do a quick unboxing. Inside the box is the unit itself, a user manual, and a USB-C charging cable. Alright, now let's go ahead and tour the Retroid Pocket Mini. And we're going to start here at the top. We have our triggers and our bumpers, and these are stacked shoulder buttons. And right off the bat, these triggers have a decent amount of travel. If you're rough with them, they do have a little bit of click to them, but if you're just kind of gentle and you don't need to hit a button that fast, they don't really clack all that much. The bumpers, on the other hand, they are quite noisy. So let me go ahead and do a quick audio test here. So your typical loud bumpers, quiet triggers, and they do feel pretty good. Like, they're not uncomfortable, and we're going to talk about comfortability of this device in a minute because this is actually surprisingly comfortable to hold. Continuing our tour at the top here, you've got our exhaust, you've got volume buttons, and you have a power button, and you have two very obvious looking screws here. And I guess maybe I'm just used to screws being a little bit more subtle, but these are kind of right in your face. I guess it's not going to matter because you're not really going to look at the device. You're going to look at it more like this, but they're there, and they're prominent if you do end up looking at the top of the device. However, if you look at the back of the device, all you have here is your Retroid logo, and you have your intake, and you have these bumps, which there are absolutely no screws here on the back. I'm just going to point that out really quick. But also, that contributes to the ergonomics of this handheld. Now, again, just like with the AMOLED Pocket Micro, this is a very glossy all-glass front. So if you take a look, you're going to see, hey, look, there's Mikhailov. There's also Mikhailov. Mikhailov, 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 Mikhailov. Retroid, Retroid. Retroid, 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 Retroid. This is a very glossy screen. Very much the same as the iNeo Pocket Micro. They have that same all glass front. In fact, if you were to put these two devices neck and neck with each other, they are very similar devices, just with subtle differences and definitely differences in price that might make one a better choice over the other. But yeah, you can definitely see that these companies are really starting to favor these all glass fronts. And this is also a bezel-less design, very similarly to the iNeo Pocket Micro. So when you are playing, there is going to really be no discernible difference between the screen and the device itself. Which, with this SFC colorway, is actually going to be really nice because if you're playing this in the dark, you're really only going to see the screen and the red buttons. You're not going to see anything else. And this is part of the reason why I like these black devices, because if you're playing them at night or in the dark or in bed, it looks like the screen is kind of floating there because you don't have anything really enhancing any of the other colors. This is why I tend to favor black devices over other colors, even though they can get kind of fingerprint smudgy. And this feels like a dome switch connection because this is a very clicky D-pad. Let's go ahead and do a sound test here. So, not as noticeable as the trigger buttons, but definitely a little noisier than the Pocket Micro. And you have start and select buttons here, and you have your Android function buttons here, and you have front facing speakers, which is a decision I'm very glad that Retroid made with this device versus the bottom facing speakers of the iNeo Pocket Micro. So you're not going to have any issues with sound. It's going to come right to your face and you're going to be able to hear this with no problem. And then you have these standard Retroid joysticks, and these will do the job. Obviously, this is a D-pad centric device, and Retroid prides itself on making D-pad centric devices, which is pretty good considering that you are mostly going to be using the D-pad on this device over the joysticks, but the joysticks are here for your Nintendo 64 or your PlayStation games or even your Dreamcast, and potentially GameCube as well. We'll get into testing a little bit later. Let's go ahead and take a look at the buttons, and these are very loud. And they do seem to have a decent amount of travel. They're a little bit higher up than I'm used to. However, they still stop before they hit the device itself, so they are fairly comfortable to use. But let me go ahead and clack them in front of the mic here just so you can see how loud they are. And then you actually don't have any I/O on the sides. And the bottom, you have your headphone jack, your USB-C port, you have your SD card slot, which is what I would prefer over what is on the iNeo Pocket Micro, because here you have this, I don't know what you would call it, this material that doesn't quite sit flush here. And here you just have a plastic cover that clips in and sits flush with the device, and you don't even know that it's there or realize that it's there once you've plugged your SD card in. And then again, you could tell that there are two screws on the bottom. So Retroid went out of their way to make sure there are no screws in the front or in the back of this device. They wanted to kind of keep things streamlined. Unfortunately, with this red colorway here, they are a little bit more prominent. I can imagine with other colors, like maybe the Saturn color, they're not going to be as prominent there. But here with this red SFC one, yeah, it's those screws are there and you can tell that they're there. So here's our contra test showing that the D-pad doesn't register false diagonals, and the fighting game test where I can pull off fireballs and tornado kicks with a high accuracy rate. I also need to add, this D-pad is very comfortable. I love Retroid D-pads going all the way back to the Retroid Pocket 3, and they just continue to deliver. So now let's address pocketability. I would consider this device to have the same pocket issues as the AMOLED Pocket Micro I reviewed a couple weeks ago, just because of these ergonomic bumps. I feel this device is just a little too big and thick to fit in a jeans pocket. Plus, there's always a concern with the joysticks on these devices, and I'm reluctant to pocket them because I don't want to risk damaging the joysticks. If you get a carrying case, this handheld will barely take up space in a book bag or a purse, however. As I was testing this device, I started to really hate the way the face buttons felt. In addition to them being super loud, they kept getting stuck. I was very much prepared to write this handheld off as a result, but my friend Aish from Aish Talks Tech taught me how to trim the membranes down to make them quieter and to make the buttons more responsive. Now, I don't recommend you do this mod, and here's why. The back shell is very hard to take off, almost impossibly so. Then, once you finally make your way to the membrane, you have to be comfortable removing the buttons, which are glued to the membrane by the way, then taking either an X-Acto knife or a flush cutter to trim off the small amount you need in order to get the membranes trimmed properly. Now, I'm a middle-aged man, and my hands aren't what they once were, so I accidentally miscut one of the membranes. Luckily, I didn't damage it beyond repair, and once I finished, the buttons felt much better and were not nearly as loud. Whenever I have to do a mod like this, I take points off my review of the handheld because it falls under the category of I shouldn't have to do this. If I have to physically open a device and modify it to make it work, it is something that should not have been shipped that way to begin with. Fortunately, I'm hearing reports that the Retroid Pocket 5's face buttons are much better, and other people have told me that the buttons are not noisy or sticky enough on the Retroid Pocket Mini to warrant opening their device up. So let me know in the comments if this is an issue for you, or if you're fine with the buttons as is. I'll also link Aish's video in the description if you want to figure out how to trim the membranes. Now I want to take a minute and compare this handheld just a little bit more to its biggest competition, the AMOLED Pocket Micro. Now the Pocket Micro is designed with Game Boy Advance in mind, but throughout my testing I actually found that the Retroid Pocket Mini, despite having a 4x3 screen, was actually the better handheld for GBA for several reasons. These devices are both the same size, but the ergonomic bumps on the Mini, as well as the AMOLED screen, just make all the difference for me when deciding which handheld to reach for. However, that isn't the view of everyone. While talking in the Retro Handhelds Discord, I found that some people like devices to be flatter in the back, so depending on how you like your ergonomics and screen type will depend on whether or not the Mini is a good fit for you. I like the pixel-perfect look of the Pocket Micro for GBA, but I was able to actually compensate for that on the Mini by setting a custom resolution where I was able to upscale to 5x resolution. Then, I moved the screen to the top middle and set a custom overlay that makes it look like the GBA logo is part of the device. These little software tweaks in RetroArch create a nice, nostalgic feel, and because the front of this device is black, the bars on the left and right just kind of blend into the device and look very gorgeous. Since we're talking about how games look on here, let's jump into our gameplay testing. This handheld will play 8 and 16-bit games no problem, and the 4x3 aspect ratio of the screen makes it absolutely perfect for these types of games. You don't need to stick with 8 and 16-bit games though. You can go up as high as GameCube, Wii, and PS2. With GameCube and Wii, using the Dolphin emulator, I was able to run all the games I tested at a 3x resolution. I also didn't need to bump the system to performance or high performance mode. I was able to keep it in standard mode, and in this mode, the fan barely kicks on. The device fan typically stays nice and quiet unless you're booting up into something more powerful or changing to that high performance mode. And speaking of more powerful, let's take a look at PS2 because I want to take a look at some hard to run games, starting with God of War 2, which I could run at a 2x resolution with no problems. By viewer request, here is Champions of Norrath, which doesn't quite run at full speed, even if I set it to a native resolution, but it starts off slow and then it catches up and runs at full speed in other moments. So I would say it is playable, but it is not a perfect experience. However, this means that PS2 is very manageable on this device. You can technically run some Switch games on this handheld, but you will want to stick to ones that look decent with a 4:3 resolution screen. Generally, indie titles and 2D games will work best here. And for the first time ever on an Android device, you can also utilize WinLater to run some old PC games. I would temper your expectations with both WinLater and Switch emulation and treat these systems as a bonus rather than a reason for buying this device. If you would like more information on Switch and WinLater emulation on the Retroid Pocket Mini, Rob the Retro Tech Dad did 2 amazing videos on setting this up, and I will link those videos in the description. But finally, let's take a look at Android gaming, and I found this is where the Retroid Pocket Mini really shines. I wouldn't recommend Genshin Impact or anything that relies on needing a 16:9 aspect ratio, but there are several games on the Play Store or with a Play Pass subscription that will automatically adjust the aspect ratio to fit the screen. As with all of these Android devices, I recommend you shop around the Play Store because you might just find a hidden gem. Now let's wrap things up with my final thoughts. Starting with the positives. I love the ergonomics on this device. This is the first device in a long time that I can honestly say is both small and comfortable. I usually judge ergonomics based on my ability to play a handheld in bed, and this one is just really nice for that exact purpose. I could curl up under my blankets and feel very comfortable on my side just playing a quick GBA game before falling asleep. Of course, I don't have to just stick with GBA, as this handheld emulates so much more. Being able to play GameCube, PS2, and even some higher systems would have blown kid me's mind. Even as a middle-aged man, my mind is still blown. I didn't think I would ever be able to see these games so crisp and clear, and the AMOLED screen just enhances that gorgeousness. Of course, no device is perfect, so let's look at the negatives. I have to take points off for these face buttons. They're great if you're willing to do surgery on the handheld, which is very difficult to do because of that hard to remove back panel and having to take a blade to the membrane. It's too easy to accidentally damage your device, and even then, you shouldn't have to do it. The buttons should just work properly out of the box. My last 2 nitpicks are on the size of the device because it's a bit too small to really enjoy some of the content that this device is capable of. Usually devices that are this small are also pocketable, but this one is just on the cusp of not being pocketable, which honestly, I don't mind giving up that pocketability because the ergonomics are just that good. But other people might not necessarily feel the same. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this a device you are considering, and what do you think is the best use case for a device like this? And please feel free to continue the conversation on both the Retro Handhelds and the Steam Machine Discords, where you can find me hanging out in between videos. And if you want to support the show like these wonderful people on the screen, you could do so by going to my Patreon page. Links for all these places are in the description. But that will do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and please be sure to like and subscribe if this video is helpful to you in any way. Every smash of that button helps the channel grow and allows me to get more content out to you. But until next time, bye for now, and don't stop believing.